Dear students, today we will be discussing about the historical overview of environmental laws and agreements. In our last session, we have already discussed about the threats to our environment. Today we will be discussing about the laws protecting them. Before we start in the main topic, let us first have what is environment is and what are environmental laws. Now, the word environment is basically very debatable, as Albert Einstein has said that everything in our surrounding is environment except myself. So basically everything, any natural resources, all the living organisms that surrounds us is called environment. And the laws, the agreements, the customary policies or even established customs that helps to protect this environment and ensures sustainable development can be called as environmental laws. So let's have a brief idea about the historical overview. Now, environmental laws have originated since centuries. So the historical process should be divided into certain categories. For our ease, we have divided them into 4 historical stages chronologically. Number 1 is the ancient era, number 2 is the medieval era, and number 3 is the colonial and industrial revolution era, followed by the last phase, that is the post-modern era. So let us discuss about the environmental laws and protective methodologies in the ancient days with a particular focus on the ancient Indian customs. Now, the earliest environmental laws and concerns for the environment can be observed in the great Indus Valley civilization, which has originated around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. While the other contemporary ancient cultures like that of Egypt or Mesopotamia focused on building large monumental structures like pyramid or ziggurat, our Indus Valley civilization is noteworthy for its high level municipal development and town planning. Now, they have a very good sense of sanitation and hygiene. The drainage system of the Harappan cities or the Indus Valley cities are well laid out and they have closed drains. The Great Bath also gives us an idea how proper their drainage system is. They have smooth tiles so that the water doesn't leaves behind logged in, and every houses of the citadel areas have proper framework with proper washrooms, proper water management and proper kitchen. So they have a good sense of hygiene and sanitation. Coming to the Vedic age, which follows the Indus Valley civilization, we found that the Vedic corpus or the ancient Vedic text, including Rig Veda, gives lot of attention for the protection of environment. In Rig Veda, trees and plants are given most importance. Yajur Veda calls on the yoga that was being performed, and here it deliberately or specifically points out the importance of fire in the yoga, and it says that it destroys all the impurities of the atmosphere. Particularly, we know that this fire or heat can obviously destroy the viruses and bacteria in the air or environment, and that's what the Yajur Veda says. The Rig Veda also gives importance for the prohibition of cutting trees and forest. I will quote from a particular Rig Vedic sloka that tells, "Do not harm the environment, do not harm the water and the flora. The earth is my mother, I am her son. Do not cut the trees, else it will pollute the environment." So such was the essence of environmental protection in the Vedic days. Coming to the post-Vedic days, we have Sushruta's Charak Samhita, where he particularly focused on the importance of water protection, that the water should be maintained, it should not be polluted, and it is the essence of life. That's why the concept of epidemics and waterborne diseases are also found in this ancient Indian text. While Sushruta gave importance for water hygiene, the emerging religious movements or the new philosophies like Buddhism, Jainism stressed special focus on the protection of animals and living organisms. They have prohibited the killing and harmful impact on any animals or God's creature. Arthashastra, which is speculated to be composed during the Mauryan ages, although it is debatable whether it is the Chanakya, the Prime Minister of Chandragupta Maurya, has composed it or not. But it is said that it is being composed from several ages, and by 1st century CE it is being composed. Now, Arthashastra is a very good text that highlights the established custom and how scientific they are. In Arthashastra, strict punishments were prescribed for those who are cutting trees or destroying forest irresponsibly. Even the monarch or the king is also not free from this punishment if he destroys forest irresponsibly. In fact, in most cases we find that what the monarch or the king is basically or have some adjustments or have some protections from the established customs. But here in Arthashastra, even the monarch is also responsible, or the monarch is also punishable if he violates the environmental laws. However, the earliest written record for environmental protection is available in Ashokan inscription. In Ashoka's major rock edict 1, Emperor Ashoka Maurya prescribed that the killing of all animals is prohibited for festivals and pleasure making, except deer and peacock. So it was the first instance where we find that there is a certain prohibition over the unnecessary killing of animals. There might be some questions that why deer and peacocks are left out. It is because that the Mauryans have special affinities for deers and peacocks, and they have originated from peacock tamers, it is said by certain historians. However, discussing about the ancient environmental laws, Chinese environmental laws should not be left out, they deserve special mention. It is said that the earliest ministry on environment or the earliest environmental policies are found in ancient China. In this respect, Zhanzi, a famous thinker of the Warring State period, which roughly corresponds around 400 BCE to 200 BCE, he gave particular specific concept on managing the state affairs through environmental protection. While it is said that during the Qiang period, the earliest ministry for the protection of environment was established, and that is also the earliest among in the world also. And that environmental ministry or the Ministry of Protecting Environment and Forest was called Yu, by the syllable YU. So now let us discuss about the environmental laws in medieval era. Now, as we know that medieval era is basically characterized with the Islamic empires of Delhi Sultanate and Mughal Empire. However, unfortunately, during these Islamic empires or Sultanate periods, there is no such noteworthy contribution to environmental protection or environmental laws. However, mention should be made of the Mughal customs of Charbagh garden system. The Mughals, who are fond of garden, they used to build up several Charbagh gardens, as you can see in the screen, based on the 4 paradise garden mentioned in Quran. Here the gardens are basically divided into 4 equal squares by certain walkways or waterways. There are certain important gardens mentioned in the list. You can see in the screen also. However, these gardens are only limited for certain royal aristocrats and family members and not open for the public. The Islamic period is also important for more forest enroachment and stringent agricultural tax laws. As in Alauddin Khilji's period, the highest tax was imposed over the farmers, and it was around 50% of the total production, excluding certain other tax called charais or gharais. As a result, it was a huge burden for the farmers, and there was lots of peasant rebellions during the medieval period. However, discussing about the medieval period, mention should be made of the irrigation system of the great Vijayanagar Empire in the far south. Now, irrigation system, by the word irrigation, we mostly have a conception that it was of modern era. However, the Vijayanagar Empire, as you can see in the map, is mostly south of the Deccan, and that's why they have mostly dry areas. However, starting from Emperor Devaraya I, which basically corresponds to 1406 to 1422, he built up several dams over the Tungabhadra and Krishna river, thereby bifurcating irrigational canals into the drier states or drier regions. As a result, Vijayanagar Empire flourished in agricultural production. Further irrigation canals and tank wells were built up by Emperor Krishnadev Raya starting from 1509 to 1529. He in fact welcomed certain Portuguese engineers also to build canals and dams. And Vijayanagar was such a beautiful state that several ambassadors like Domingo Paez Duarte Barbarossa has said that the eye has not seen such a glamorous city like Vijayanagar. So now let us discuss about the environmental laws and policies during the colonial phase or during the Industrial Revolution era. The earliest environmental laws in Europe was found in the early medieval or the early modern England, whereby in 1306 King Edward I prohibited the burning of sea coal due to excessive smoke and smog expulsion. His successor, Emperor Henry V and Richard II, extended the prohibition and also made capital punishment for those who are still burning sea coal. However, the greatest showdown or the paradigm shift came with the Industrial Revolution of 17th and 18th century. The Industrial Revolution gave a huge boost in the production system, and as a result, several factories sprang up. Now these factories need natural resources, whereby the natural resources would come by destroying nature. Not only forests were now being cut out or cut down for factory settlements and also urban settlements, as the population also sprang up due to the Industrial Revolution, but also forest became an important supplier of timber. Why is timber needed? Not only as the fuel to run the factories, but timbers since 19th century would be supplied for the growing railway industries, for supplying the railway sleepers, and also for building the transoceanic vessels or ships. However, the resources of Europe is limited, and as a result we find that due to constant forest cutting, by 1700s already European plains were showing the depletion or the sign of depletion of forest. As you can already see in the map, large forest tracts of Württemberg and the Black Forest of Germany and the Bavarian forest were just now cleared down. But the industries would still continue, natural resources is still needed. So now who will be the supplier? None but the colonies like India, and as a result, there came a paradigm shift for the forest and environmental resources in South Asia. The earliest initiative by the colonial state was the establishment of Forest Department in 1864 and the introduction of scientific forestry. By the word scientific forestry, they are not basically doing good for the forest, but what they are doing, they are basically documenting entire forest map of India. Because they need, for cutting forest, for knowing or exploiting the forest, you need to know where the timbers are there, which timber is usable, which is not, and what type of forest are there. So by this scientific forestry, they get entire catchhold of the forest map of India. So now the next step follows the enacting of the Forest Act of 1878. By this, entire forest lands in India were being categorized into 3 divisions. Number 1 is the reserve forest, which will be reserved for the immediate extraction of natural resources and timbers. The protected forest, which will be protected for future use of the colonial state, and the village or community forest, where limited access would be given to the indigenous tribal population. As to historians like Ramchandra Guha, Madhav Gadgil, and other historians, the largest impact of this Forest Act fell upon the indigenous tribal population, because for centuries they have a symbiotic relationship with the forest. Nobody has tried to destroy them. But now within a single night, their entire right or movement into the forest were closed down by a foreign government. So as a result, large number of tribal rebellions were formed. In the 1927 Forest Act, further enabled the colonial state to engross the forest. Coming from the forest, another important thing that needs to be mentioned is the colonial river management. The colonial river management, in fact, brought about colonial exploitation not over the forest, but over also the water resources. By applying colonial water management, they tried to tame the rivers of India. They started building dams, not only for hydropower projects, but for irrigation and other things, which historian Sunil Amrit called water's final subjugation to technology. Again, in the Himachal forest, as we find, they use the river for the communication of timbers. Now this river valley forest of Himachal Pradesh were being surrounded with good qualities of deodar and teak timbers. Now the problem for the colonial state is that they need to harness this timber, but they don't know how to transport this timber, because they are mostly located in the interior, inaccessible Himachal valleys. So they use the rivers for them, and as you can find, that large volumes of timber logs were just floated down the river into the nearby plain where they are dumped. The Punjab irrigation system is another important project for the colonial state for taming the rivers. As you can find, this is the Punjab canal colonies, as you can see in the screen. Now the Punjab region, mostly the western Punjab region, although was bifurcated by several tributaries and the industry itself, but due to less rainfall, agriculture was mostly limited to the teeny strips of river banks, and mostly the lands are barren. But the colonial state did what? From 1870s, they artificially bifurcated the rivers, building several irrigation canals. Now the lands became productive, and mostly capitalist agriculture was flourished. Now, who will get the land? Because these are barren. It's the colonial state that would decide, and as a result, control on the water led to their control over the land, people, and society of Punjab. After colonial empire or after colonial era, we come to the last phase of the postmodern phase or the post-World War phase. Now, as we know that the world wars showed how human conflict can result in the mass destruction of nature. Not only the atomic explosions of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but through entire 6 years of World War II and in fact in the World War I, large-scale destruction of human lives, human properties, and natural resources were done. So after World War, there was a growing thrust to protect the environment, to reduce this war machinery. The earliest sign was in 1955, which was found in New York, Pennsylvania, where strict laws were enacted to control the smog emission. However, the first instance after the post-World War scenario was the Ramsar Convention in 1971. The Ramsar Convention is on the wetlands, and it was the first instance where there was a concern among the world leaders to protect the wetlands of the world. Wetlands, by which we means that anything which is not dry, like the mangroves or even the coastal areas or the river plains. So this need to be preserved. The largest, in fact, we can say the most important convention that took place in the post-World War era was the Stockholm Conference of 1972. It was United Nations' first significant conference on international environmental issues, and it marked a turning point in global environmental politics. It has been attended by 113 nations, 600 NGOs, and around 1,500 journalists. The Stockholm Declaration for the first time ensured that the environment needs to be protected and that man has the ability to protect it, else it would result in a drastic consequence. It also gives particular focus for the reduction of world population. However, there are certain other international environmental laws also, like the London Dumping Law of 1972, which was particularly designed to reduce the disposal or discharge of waste in the sea and ocean waters. Followed by it was the Marpol Convention of 1978 that prohibits or focus on reducing the discharge of oil spills in the oceans or sea by the ships and the vessels. And the Vienna Convention of 1985 is very important, which was followed by the Montreal Protocol of 1987. It for the first time gives special importance or focus over the ozone layer depletion. As we all know that the ozone, which basically gives the protective covering to Earth from the harmful UV radiation, was depleting. And by that time, scientists have discovered that the harmful effects of the ozone layer depletion and other important impacts. So this Vienna Convention and Montreal Protocol asks the nations, see, we cannot rebuild the ozone, it's very problematic, but at least we can lower the depletion. And the Montreal Protocol basically asks the nation to reduce ozone depleting substance, to reduce the production of ozone depleting substance, particularly chlorofluorocarbon or CFC. However, last but not the least, in the international environmental law scenario is the UN Conference on Earth Summit held at Rio de Janeiro in 1992, where several nations met up and they've asked or decided, in fact agreed, to reduce the production of harmful substances, to reduce industrial emission, to counter the threat of global warming and environmental exploitation. Now let us discuss the last portion of our topic, that is the environmental laws in independent India. Now the environmental concern among the official circles of GOI started only after India attended the Stockholm Conference. In 1985, we set up the Ministry of Environment and Forest, which is now called the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The 1972 Wildlife Protection Act, which ensures the preservation of endangered species and prohibit their hunting, deserves special mention, along with the Forest Conservation Act of 1986. However, new boost to environmental protection started from 2014 onwards with the current regime. Within the last 8 years, we have built around 259 areas as protected forest. The tiger population, which was once being threatened to be extinct, now, after tireless effort from different official circles and from the people also, has doubled in the recent years. In fact, one of the finest example is the introduction of the cheetah population, which was once extinct in India, now to the Kunho National Park in Madhya Pradesh, India. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said, that protecting environment and growing up or continuing development projects goes hand in hand. We are not stopping industrialization, we are not stopping roadway projects or railway projects, but yet we are protecting the environment. And as he has said, the Prime Minister has said, I will quote, India has shown to the world that it is possible to protect environment and ensure economic development simultaneously. Lastly, the most ambitious project that needs to be mentioned is the Namami Gange project. Now, as we know, Ganga, the holiest river in India, after centuries or decades of human activities, has become one of the most polluted river in South Asia. But from 2014, the central government introduced the ambitious project of Namami Gange for clearing up this pollution and making Ganga the most purest river. It ensures the vigorous development of several water management projects, water cleaning up projects, and gave a fund of 20,000 crores so that it can achieve its objective without any prior delay or any further delay by 2026. In fact, we can find that the water of Ganges, in fact, the biological oxygen deficiency in Ganges has reduced, and Ganga has becoming one of the purest river in India, as UN has listed the Namami Gange project to clean up the river Ganga as one of the world's 10 pioneering initiatives that are successfully restoring the natural world. So, from one of the decaying environmental scenario in the colonial phase, we have now come one of the uplifting scenario of environment in the present decade. And we hope that the sustainable development will continue along with environmental protection and preservation, because after all, without environment, without the natural life or natural resources, life is not possible in the world.